Well, hello. This is Coach Z with the then and now. And today we're going to be doing the then, but he's still now my very, very good and lifetime friend, Art Shamsky. And Mr. Shamsky, a great former Cincinnati Red and a New York Met and New York Met World Series champion. He will be on the show today. And also, Mr. Shamsky, we will talk about his feat of hitting 4 home runs in a row, which, it's a very interesting way he got those 4 home runs in a row, but we'll talk about that. But anyway, today, we're going to, have a wonderful podcast with Art Shamsky. Before we get started, I always have a shout out each week, and, first of all, I just mentioned to Art that, I had lunch yesterday with a couple of his, 58, U-City, classmates, Dave Lax and, Sandy Pomerantz and, Steve Wasserman. And, also, I have some shout outs here. Um, I want to shout out to my grandson, of course, Jake Brown, who's made this podcast available. I always shout out to Jake. And also, Jake, his mom, not his mother, but his sister Dylan and his dad, they happened to be at Wrigley Field to see those 3 consecutive home runs, which we'll talk about later in the show. And then my daughter Jennifer had a birthday yesterday, August 18th. And August 18th is a beautiful day because that's when she was born. And also in 1957, I didn't know what the hell I was doing with my life. So what happened on that particular day, I left for Cape May, New Jersey as a Coast Guard reservist for 6 months. I was 17 years old. But anyway, I want to have a shout out to all the little turtles who are going to be starting Spady Elementary School next Monday. They'll be going back to school, and they got great teachers over there, and everything there will go well. Let's see. My grandson Leo's here with me, and his sister Annie left for Arizona. She's going to be a freshman this year at the University of Arizona. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I remind people every day, support mental health. Okay, people who have mental health issues, they need your support, and uh, uh, support them, and understand that you can help them, and they can help themselves. So that's a big issue. And now, if my friend's ready, we want to introduce the great University City icon, Art Shamsky. How you doing today, Shamsky?
It's good to be on with you, Z-Man. We go back a long way, a lot of memories, a lot of good stuff.
A lot of great memories, my friend. Good Lord, I remember back in 1956, Shamsky, I was at your house. Hey, I don't know if you remember this, but we were watching the great football game of all time back in those days, the Giants and the Colts when Amici scored in overtime that playoff game. Do you remember that or not, Shamsky?
I do. Yeah, it was a great game, and we were big sports fans, all of us. We loved the game of baseball, but we played it, but we loved every sport, and I remember those great days, and I remember that game in particular. And then when I got to New York eventually and met some of the guys who probably not aren't around now, but met some of the guys who were involved in that game. It was a big thrill for me because it was a very special, important game in NFL history.
Oh, yes, it was. And I want to go back to you're a very interesting guy in a lot of ways. But for you to make it to the big league, Shamsk, and we can go through the whole history. You played 1 year of high school baseball. Am I correct when I say that?
Yeah, that was a strange thing. I was basically very shy, but we had moved. My parents and my sister and I had moved from the city out to University City, and there was some confusion about, where I would be placed in graduating in January or graduating in June, and so that became a little bit. And then again, I guess go back to me being not the most confident person and not knowing really anybody when I got there. I think that was the factors. And then I was lucky enough to be on that team that lost in the state championship in 1958. But I blame it on myself because I was really shy and for me, I guess the thought of trying to go out and maybe not making it at U City was more scary than even than going out and doing it,
Well, you know what, Shamsky, I won't. I'll forgive you today, but see, if you had played when you were a junior, we could have played together, and we would have probably been a hell of a lot better than we were when I was a senior. But Art, uh, you you went down to Missouri, and I think we were both in the Sammy house down there. We won't even talk about what went on in that house, but but we were down there, and then hey, you know who? Listen, do you remember one night when a guy by the name of Skinny Gallant was using a restroom, and it sounded like he was unloading for about 30 minutes. I I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do that. That was the longest,
Yeah,
longest bathroom thing I've ever heard in my life.
it
And
really it sounded like somebody was really taking a big gallon of water and just kept dumping it into the urinal. But anyway, Skinny was a great guy, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, all those guys we grew up with were fun guys and great memories. You talk about things that happened before. Right now, I'm lucky to remember what I did yesterday, but you bring back such great memories, Z man, and you were such a big part of my life. I tell kids all the time about when I do a lot of these clinics and I do talk about baseball. It really starts when you're young, and if you have good friends that want to play the game and love the game, then you're halfway there. You're not so much there to the big leagues, but halfway with understanding that baseball is the greatest sport in the world. It teaches you teamwork, it teaches you humility, it teaches you how to deal with failure. And I was lucky enough to have friends like you who all we wanted to do was play ball. We could go to Heman Park there and make up games, and we didn't need 18 guys for two teams of nine. We could have 4 or 5 guys and draw lines and make up games. And that was really where you learned the game and you learned about all the things that it took to get better. And what I tell kids when I talk to them now, and not everybody's going to make the big leagues. It's so difficult, but there is now more teams, so the opportunities are much greater now than when I started and played. But I tell kids just remember one thing, along with some tidbits that I think about hitting. But I tell them, when you go out to play, you never know who's watching you. There could be 5 people in the stands. It could be raining. You might not see one person. It might be way out in center field. But that one person might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody and can mention your name, and it leads to all sorts of things. So I tell these kids that once you put that uniform on and go between those white lines, you never know who's watching you, and always remember that. And I think that's for me, it's a good philosophy to tell these kids, because I think there's a lackadaisical attitude sometimes where kids think it's all going to be easy and this and that, but it's not that way. You have to work hard at it and be lucky and stay healthy. There's a lot of factors involved, but I think that's really one aspect of it that I enjoy talking to kids about how to get out there and give it your best. And I tell kids, everybody's going to strike out. Everybody's going to have bad games. It's really how you bounce back. And that's the difference in players who succeed. It's the players who can bounce back from those 0 for 4s and 0 for 3s and understand that there's a game of percentages. You're going to fail a lot more than you succeed. And that's the way I look at it.
Well, see, you're a great role model, Shams, for young kids, because here's a guy who played 1 year of high school baseball, went down to Missouri for 1 year, and in those days, you could play freshman baseball or whatever you had, but you couldn't even play on the varsity as a freshman. The NCAA didn't allow it then. And then you go up to Cincinnati, if I remember the story correctly. Didn't you go up there with Bill Shamsky? And you took batting practice at the old Crosley Field, Shamsk and Branch
No,
Rickey?
actually, they worked me out in at Bush Stadium. I'm not even sure if it was Bush Stadium back then. It was 1958. I was, just 17 at the time.
Yeah.
And what a thrill for me! I got a chance to meet Fred Hutchinson and Wally Moses, who was then the hitting coach, and it turned out that over the years that I played, really didn't have many hitting coaches. And Wally Moses took me aside and started talking to me about hitting. I'm 17 years old. I weigh about 150 pounds wet. And they had me in batting practice there with all these extra men for the Cincinnati Reds. And, we idolized these guys that played the big leagues. And I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and what the heck is this kid doing here? And I got a chance to take batting practice with this in the big leagues. And that's when they had the vest uniforms and my skinny arms were sticking out of these uniforms. And but it was such a thrill for me, and they treated me so nice. And and then a few weeks later, there was a few other scouts that talked to me, but I really had this great experience with Cincinnati, and worked my way up in the minor leagues with them. And those years in the minors were great because I met so many great players like Pete Rose and Tony Perez and Johnny Bench and all those guys. We played together, but that workout with Cincinnati was really the turning point for me. And having those conversations with Fred Hutchinson, then the manager, and Wally Moses, who was the hitting coach back then, like I said, it really turned out as I went through the minor leagues and got to the big leagues with the Reds, and then eventually with the Mets. I never had a hitting coach. We always just had to do it on our own. And now it's different. Every team has three or four or five hitting coaches. But that one experience and that batting experience when they worked me out in St. Louis was really the key moment for me and turned my life around, because I signed relatively soon after that with the Reds and didn't get a lot of money, but it was the beginning of me being able to go to the minor leagues and spend 5 years in the minor leagues with all those great players who eventually were part of that big red machine in the 70s. But I was able to work and play with those great players, like I said, Pete Rose and Bench and Tommy Harper and Tommy Helms and Tony Perez and Lee May and all these guys that went on to have great careers.
Well, you had a great career too, and the minor leagues. Just real quick, heck, it doesn't happen so easily. You went to Macon, then you went to Geneva, and then in San Diego you had really some great success. So San Diego at the time was a AAA club, right, Shamsk? And
Yeah,
you hit, gee whiz, you hit in 2 years there. I think you hit close to 50, 45 home runs in San Diego, and then up to the big leagues. Tell me something
yeah.
about Pete Rose. Let's talk about him for a minute. Do you mind?
Well, no, no problem. When I first signed with the Reds, I went to spring training in 1960. I didn't know anything. I was just this naive kid and was really overwhelmed by being in that position. And all of the guys back in those days, the Reds had about 8 minor league teams, and we trained in Tampa, Florida. I'm on my own and just meeting all these guys, and they sent me up after spring training to Geneva, New York, which was their team in the then called the New York Penn League. It was Geneva, Auburn, Wellsville, Corning, Elmira, and Erie, Pennsylvania. One team you stayed overnight, and that was Erie. The rest you came back after the game. So it was Class D, and I believe we were all making around $400 a month, $100 a week to play baseball, but we didn't care. And we were getting $1.50, $2 meal money when we went on the road, although we would come right back after the games, except for Erie, and I think we got $2.50 a day for meal money when we stayed overnight. But that's when I met Pete, and he came in June. He wasn't there for spring training. He graduated in June of that year, but Tony was on the team, Tony Perez, who's in the Hall of Fame now, and myself, and a couple other good players. But we were a bad team. We were the worst of their two Class D teams. In fact, we were so bad we got the manager fired during the middle of the year, which is kind of uncalled for. I'll never forget it. His name was Reno Di Benedetto. It's funny, Ronnie. I don't remember what I did yesterday, but I can remember the manager's name in 1960 that I played for. And we got hit, and he got fired, and they brought in a guy named Jack Cassini. And right around that time, Pete joined the club in June in Geneva, and we became friends right away. But if you would have seen him play, you would have said the only reason they signed him was because he was from Cincinnati. He couldn't really do anything. The only thing he really did well was run hard to first base after a walk.
No
Wasn't a
kidding.
good hitter, wasn't a good fielder. They didn't know whether he should play second base or third base or the outfield. So in the next year, people don't realize this. They both, Tony Perez and Pete, played another year of Class D ball. Pete went to Tampa, Florida, played for a guy named Johnny Vandermeer, who was famous for pitching to back-to-back no-hitters. And Tony stayed in Geneva for another year, and they moved me to Topeka, Kansas, Class B, where I played with another terrific bunch of guys. But they stayed 2 years in Class D. And ironically, Tony's in the Hall of Fame, and Pete, of course, went on to have the career as an unbelievable career. And I eventually think he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I think he's eligible next year in 27. But it's ironic. But both those guys had to play 2 years in Class D baseball, and they moved me up, and then we were all together the next year in Macon, Georgia, of all places, in the Sally League. And again, we all had really good years. And then I went to San Diego. But from that A ball team where Pete and I were together in Macon, Georgia, Pete went to spring training in 1963 as an it wasn't on the roster with the big leagues, and he beat out. Remember Don Blasingame?
Sure.
Don played for the Cardinals and was with Cincinnati at the time. Pete went to spring training. They called him Charlie Hustle. Made the team, came rookie of the year, and the rest is history. And then we were together with the Reds when I made it to the big leagues. But those years in the minors for me were wonderful. I got to play with some great players. Back then, Ronnie, the game was different. There was less teams. It was much harder to make it to the big leagues than it is now. I signed. There was only 16 teams, and then when I got to big leagues, there was only 20. Now there's 30. And that's another story we could talk about. They're going to expand to two more teams in a few years. There'll be 32 teams, and to make the big leagues back in those days was very, very difficult. If I would give you a list of players I played against in the minors, and particularly in that Coast League you mentioned, all the players that I played against for the most part were players who were in my position who couldn't make it to big leagues because there was no room. I had good years in AAA, and I remember Fred Hutchinson in spring training would the very last day in '63 said to me, you had a great spring, you had a great year. Where am I going to play you? I got Frank Robinson in right field. I got Vada Pinson in center. I got Pete Rose playing some left field, and I got Tommy Harper, who was going to turn out to be a great player playing left. There's no room, so you got to go back to AAA. So I spent 5 years in the minor leagues trying to make it to big leagues. But the good thing about all that is I played against guys who were in the same position as me, who couldn't make it to the big leagues because there was no room. And if I went around that Pacific Coast League and gave you names of players I played against, pitchers, or some of them are in the Hall of Fame, they couldn't make it because there was just no room. And so in some ways, I was down about it, but in many ways, it was good for me to play against all these guys because it got me ready for the big leagues. Not that I had that many great years, but the fact is, I was much better prepared for the big leagues then if I would have gone right from 1963, say, right into the big leagues, or 1962 like Pete did. But nowadays, like I said, it's much easier to make it to the big leagues. They need players. They have one good year in the minors and they get to the big leagues. And some of them are not. Some guys are not prepared. They just don't play against that good competition. And that's a conversation for maybe another time. But the reality of it is, back in those days, it was so much harder to make it to the big leagues. And I look back on I was relatively healthy then. Unfortunately, I got hurt a lot when I got to the big leagues, but the reality was I was in decent shape and was relatively healthy. And I tell people the fact remains that if I didn't have friends like you who went out with me and we played ball, made up games in those early years, in our early teens, and things would have never fallen into place for me. All those wonderful times we spent practicing and playing really led the groundwork for me to be able to develop my skills. And I tell that to people all the time. It wasn't just signing a contract and making it in the minor leagues. It was really those early years with my friends who shared those moments with me. And in some ways, I feel bad. Like yourself, you were a great athlete. Luckily, somebody could have looked at you and said, "Hey, I'm going to sign this guy as a pitcher or a fielder, whatever it might be," and it would have been totally different. But I was very lucky, and again, because I had good friends like you that we formed relationships, and we formed
Yeah.
our basis for playing the game
Well,
in those
Art,
early
let
years.
me let me tell you something that I remember vividly. You got hurt. You had a hand injury. Um, I don't remember what year you were in the minor leagues, and you had surgery, and you came home, and then you.
That was the first one. That was Macon, Georgia.
All right,
I
and then
came home. Dr. Middleman operated on me for the first time.
then you called me.
He was a Cardinal doctor at the time.
Right. You called me and you said, "Hey, I want to see if how I feel." And I went down to Heman Park with you. I don't know if you remember or not. And I always thought, how the hell does Shamsky? What's the big deal? How the hell did he get to the minor leagues? He played 1 year of high school, and I'm like, I'm pretty cocky. I don't think I was any more than 19 years old then. How old were you then at Macon?
Um,
We
I
were,
was either just 18 or just
yeah.
turned 19.
So I might have been a year or two older than you. So you called me and said, "Would you throw some batting practice to me down there? I want to see how I feel." And I thought, "Yeah, you're darn right. I want to throw some batting practice." And we went down there, and I figured I'm gonna show him. And you hit one so frickin' far off of me over that creek, over that creek. And I said,
I think you're
"No,
exaggerating a little
no, no,
bit.
no, no. I'm not. I remembered. I said, hmm, maybe it's pretty good, isn't he, Ron? But
Yeah.
we had some great times. And by the way, speaking about the guys that we played with, we'll go back on some serious stuff. But some of the guys that we played down there at the park with Melvin Rodney Stupp. You remember that guy, don't you?
I do very well. How could you even think that I wouldn't remember that, the name and the person?
And how about Joe and Helen Stupp?
Yeah. Yeah. Mother and father.
Mom and Dad
Yeah.
Stupp, yeah. Oh,
We
we
could,
we had some fun with those folks. Didn't we? They were some good
we,
people. There were some great
you know,
people. But listen,
those, as I said, they shaped our lives, and I'm so grateful for the friends that I had that I don't, unfortunately, I don't get back to St. Louis as much as I would like because my mom and dad are gone and my sister's gone, but. I think about those times and the good things and you know what the reality was all we wanted to do was play ball. We didn't get in trouble. We just wanted to go out and play ball, make up games, and I was saddened when Coach Greenblatt passed away, the coach at U City when I played there, and he was he was a great guy, and I wish we would have won one more games that year and won that championship. I believe
yeah,
it was against Cleveland High School, if I'm not mistaken.
2-0, I
And
think, Shams. 2-0. I
yeah,
think Bruce Mills, who's a very, very good pitcher, pitched against you guys that day.
yeah,
Who threw for
yeah.
you guys? Franzel?
Ronnie, I think about those years. What reminded me about it when I found out about a good friend Ron Hunt passing away a few weeks ago, and I remember that we were lucky. All the leagues we played in and baseball we played in against competition. The baseball in St. Louis was so good and so competitive. And if you look back in the history of the game, especially in the 60s and 70s, there were so many players from the St. Louis area and the suburbs that went on to play in the big leagues that it was just amazing. And it all had to do with the Corey League, where we started in Little League and then went on to into American Legion ball and high school ball, American Legion. It was so well organized and so well put together. And I ran into a lot of guys that I had either played against or knew and then met again either in the minor leagues or the big leagues who had gone through the baseball in the St. Louis area, and they were all very gave high praise to all the baseball that's played in the area. And I don't know if it's still that way, but I know when I was younger, the game was really important to everybody in the area and really put together well.
Well, Shams, while now you make it to the big leagues, and of course, we just had a tremendous thing with this Baez kid who his first 3 times at bat in the big leagues, he hit 3 home runs, and everybody was ranting and raving, and hey, they should be ranting and raving. That's a hell of an accomplishment. But then I started thinking about you, and I remember vividly. I mean, and when you came into bat, I know you came into pinch hit in the 8th inning, Shams, and you homered. And then what was the next inning? The 11th?
Well, yeah, it was a game on August 12th in Cincinnati at Crosley Field. I wasn't in the starting lineup, and I actually wasn't pinch hitting. I came in, Dave Bristol was the manager, and he made a pitching change, and he put me in right field, and so I hit in the pitcher's spot at the bottom of the inning.
Okay.
And we were playing the Pirates, who had a great team with Roberto Clemente, Willie Stargell, all these really terrific players. I forget who was starting pitching in the game. But anyway, I batted in the bottom of the 8th and we were losing and I hit a home run to tie up the game. But it wasn't a pinch hit home run because I had changed.
Yeah.
I was hitting in the pitcher's spot. And we went into extra innings and we got behind in two times. And both those times we got behind, I hit home runs to tie up the game. And then we eventually lost in the 14th inning. So I ended up hitting 3 home runs two in extra innings, which is almost uncalled for. You either win the game when you hit two home runs in extra inning. But I do believe, and I don't say this egotistically. I just know that nobody's ever done it. Is that I think I'm the only player to ever hit three home runs in a game in a row that wasn't in the starting lineup.
Absolutely. Nobody ever
Yeah,
will.
yeah. So we lost that game. And on the next day, we were rained out, and that was Saturday. And then Sunday, for another reason, strange reason, I'm not in the starting lineup.
Dave Bristol.
And Dave Bristol, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the story gets even stranger. He sent me up to pinch hit in the fifth or sixth inning, and I forget who I pinch hit for. And I did another home run. This one off Vernon Law, who was a pretty good pitcher
Mm-hmm.
in Crosley Field, put us ahead in the game. And of course, we ended up losing that game. So I hit four home runs in a row in two games, and we lost both those games. But here's the crazy part of it. After that game, we flew to Los Angeles, and in the paper that next day, there's some articles and some things about me hitting four home runs in a row. And we get to the ballpark, and Dave Bristol again is the manager, and I'm not in the starting lineup. I've hit four home runs in a row. And this is, I tell people this jokingly, that this is the reason I decided that after this conversation I had with Dave Bristol, that I would possibly never talk to another manager again about playing or not playing, because it was just really bizarre. So I'm not in the starting lineup, and I walk up to Dave Bristol, and again, I'm really shy. I'm not somebody's going to make a big deal out of something, but I figured, you hit four home runs in a row, you got to be in the starting lineup. And I said to him, Dave, I'm just curious. I forgot who was pitching for the Dodgers. It could have been Koufax. I still should have been in the starting lineup. I said to him, Dave, I'm just curious. I hit four home runs in a row. How come I'm not in the starting lineup? And without blinking, I said, well, we're just looking for some more power. And I said to him, more power. I just hit four home runs in a row. And so I vowed I would never talk to another manager. But I did pinch in that game, hit a line drive single to right field. So I mean, I was in a groove in any way. But that was a big part of my life. The bat that I hit the four in a row is on display in the Hall of Fame, and I get a lot of people going up there and seeing it. It's in special feats, and if it's they rotate these kind of things, and if you don't see it, you can ask somebody there, and they'll bring it out. And I donated it to Hall of Fame because it was such a special feat for me. But thank you for bringing it up. But I tell that story, and people just scratch their head and say, hit four home runs in a row, but not play the next day. It's very strange. But I did see where this young player hit three home runs in a row, and that's incredible. That's I think it was his first game in the big leagues, right?
First game in the big leagues, first pitch, home run. I saw it.
Yeah.
Then my wife, Sue, she's not a real big baseball fan, but all of a sudden I said, this kid just hit a home run on his first pitch. So we start watching, and second time up, home run. Third time up, third time up, home run. You can't make it up, Shams. But you know what? Uh, what'll go down in history for him probably that'll never happen again. What you did will never happen again either. In fact, what you did, the fact that you were not a starter in that game, well, it'll never happen again because with the stupid rule they have now, you put a guy on second base to get the game over
Yeah.
with. Come on.
Yeah, Ronnie, we could talk forever about the game and how it's changed. It's still the greatest game in the
Yes.
world, but I have problems with some of the things they do. I mean, if you want to talk about it, we can. I'm just I'm not big on all these guys just swinging for the fences every time they go up. Strikeouts. If you check the box scores, look at walks and strikeouts and number of pitchers, and you'll see it, every game has got anywhere from 17 to 21, 22 strikeouts, 7, 8 walks, 8 or 9 pitchers, and maybe more. It's just not the game that I grew up with and love. I know people like it; they want the big innings, but I think what that does is it takes the fans out of the game. You don't second guess the manager anymore. It's determine who's going to come in the pitch, who's going to start. And I think that I played for managers who I think would have trouble with the front office telling them who to start, should be in the starting lineup. And I think that I think for me, the game, while I still love it and follow it, it's just not the same game. And I think the strikeouts is really one of the things that I really am not crazy about. Guys strike out, they walk back to the dugout like nothing happened.
No
They
big
don't
deal.
care. They don't care. If you see a runner on second, You're very rarely going to see a right-hand batter try to move that runner to third with less than 2 outs because his agent is saying to him, look, if you hit 10, 15 more home runs, I'm going to get you that money that the guy, look at the guy on the other side of the locker room. He's making 20 million. You're making 10. You hit 10, 15 more home runs. I'm going to get you his money. And that guy said, well, why should I give up that at bat? And the other thing I think for me is that I think the fans are taken out of the game. They don't second guess this hit and run. There's no very little stealing. There is stealing, but not so much. And there's no, it's just kind of programmed. And fans used to be able to. I used to like the bunt. I could hit home runs, but I used to like that bunt play where the third baseman's breaking in, shortstop's going to third or second baseman's going to first, pitcher might hit away, or whoever's bunting might hit away. It gave you a little bit of leeway to second guess the manager and get the fans involved. You don't see that anymore, and they don't even teach bunting anymore in the minor leagues, Ronnie. You just throw hard and swing up. That's really the mantra now in baseball, and there are some great athletes. There's no doubt about that. There are great. They're taken care of much better than we were. They're fed better. The meal money is unbelievable. The payroll is so much greater. But the game itself, to me, it's. I think the other thing. I hope I'm not talking too much here. I hope but you got me going here. I think the other thing that I'm missing the game is they've lost the tradition of the game. Very few teams have tradition. The Cardinals, I think, have some. Yankees, of course. L.A., the Dodgers, the Giants, a little bit. Maybe Boston, the Cubs. But there's no more tradition. There's just what's find ways to make money. You're with the gambling now. Everybody's on their phone, betting every pitch, every play. There's just you're going to see on the uniform pretty soon. DraftKings, Caesar's Palace, uh, all the hotels, all the things that spend money. You're going to see that on the uniforms, and we've lost that sense of tradition, and I'm sad about that because as kids growing up, we felt it, we knew about it, we knew. Yeah, look, here's a perfect example. When I was at Cincinnati, we always played the first game of the season, first day on a Monday we played, and the rest of the baseball played that night or next day. And now it's wherever they can get the game of the week and the most money from ESPN or NBC, and so that's the way it's going, and we either deal with it or we just forget about the game, and most of us really love the game, so we stick with it. But on a personal level, I think the game has changed a lot since we played as kids, and certainly as I played in the big leagues.
Well, Shamsky, not just the hitters. I was a pitcher my whole life. I pitched in high school, and then I pitched at Washington U. And when I pitched at Washington U, we played 9 inning games. And when my coach over there, Irv Utz, gave me the baseball, if I'd have said to him, "Hey, I can give you 5 good innings today," Irv, you know what he would have said to me? "Get your ass over and sit down. I'm giving you the
Yeah,
baseball. You finish the game. Finish it. If you can't finish it, fine. We'll bring somebody in. But you go out there to pitch 9 innings. Or in high school kids got to be able to. High school kids are pitching 7 innings, Shams.
yeah,
They're pitching
yeah,
7 every time they go out there, and these kids, they want to start and finish the baseball game. In the big leagues, if
yeah.
you get 5 innings, you're a big timer. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's you're exactly right, Z-Man. It's I had because of my Met connection, I've had people always come up to me and said they had this kid Jacob DeGrom who's still pitching, really great arm. He was a shortstop. They made a pitcher out of him, and he's had real. One, I think he won the Cy Young 2 years or 2 out of 3 years, and but people would come up to me and say, "Hey, is he as good as Tom Seaver?" And of course, I played with Seaver and all those great pitchers with the Mets, but I would say to him, tell me how many complete games did Jacob DeGrom have in his career? And do you know how many Tom Seaver had? And they didn't know. And I remember I looked it up and I had some idea of a round figure. I know that Seaver pitched like 235 complete games, and Jacob DeGrom had five. So how do you measure that compared to somebody who had all these complete games? And as I do, you followed the game. Guys I played with, for example, Seaver and Jerry Kuzman and Fergie Jenkins and Gibson and Carlton and Koufax, Drysdale, Marichal. If you went out to the mound in the fifth, sixth inning and they're in a one run game, either winning or losing, they're not coming out of that game. they're not coming out of that game. And that manager is going to leave them in there. And that's why there's so many great pitchers in that era pitched so many complete games because they were able to compete all the way to the seventh, eighth, and ninth inning. And now, guys who are 4 or 5 inning pitchers, they come to the ballpark and they know they're going to face 15 batters. That's it. Whether they're giving up a hit or not. If they're pitching a no perfect game, they're coming out of that game. And they're going to face 15, 16, 17 batters at most. And that's the way the game is programmed. And the lineups are made up by the front office. The schedule of pitchers that come in is made up, and you'll see some changes due to what's going on in the game. But for the most part, these managers are really tied to the front office about who's playing and who's not playing. And there's a lot of guys I played for, managers that would not tolerate that. But then again, the game is different in the way it is. And so if you want a job, maybe you have to do that. But we know that the game has changed a lot, and you still have to run, throw, hit, field, and pitch. But the game itself is played different. And like you said, that runner on second base is just ridiculous. Now you can argue the ball and strike. You can, yeah, I don't even know how it works anymore. You can't throw over to first base, but twice. I
Yeah.
I don't know. I just check the box scores now. It's what I do.
Hey, Shams, you just mentioned Seaver, and I remember you and I having a conversation that you and uh, I guess you had 3 or 4 or 5 of your teammates when Tom was struggling, and you guys took a road trip.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? Is that okay to talk about that road
Yeah, I
trip?
was writing a book. I was writing a book for our 50th anniversary of the '69 Met team, and I still do personal appearances because of it. It was such an incredible team, where we came from, what was going on in the world in city, New York, in the late '60s, and we were doing a 50th anniversary book that I wrote with a terrific writer called Eric Sherman, and we were doing interviews, and I said to Eric, I just don't want to do an interview over the phone with Tommy. He had just announced that he was in early stages of dementia, and we decided to take a trip out there, and I took Bud Harrelson, who had just announced that he was in early stages of Alzheimer's, and they
Wow.
were roommates and friends, and so we took him and Ron Swoboda, who made a great catch in Game 4 in the series when Seaver was pitching, and Jerry Koosman, who was the second best pitcher. So we all coordinated from different places. Buddy and I went together with Eric because I had to kind of handhold him because he was struggling to get through the airport and everything. So we went out together, and then Kuzman met us and Swoboda met us out in San Francisco, and we went to see Tom, who lived up in Napa Valley. Was in the wine business, but he was starting to really not be well. And when I talked to him, he said, "Ask my wife about coming out," and he said, "So I'm great. I'd love to see you." So when I called her, she said, "You might come out here, and he might not feel good, so it might be a wasted trip." I said, "Let's just take a chance." And we took a flight, and we got out to San Francisco. I called her. He was about 30 miles north of San Francisco, well, maybe a little further up in Napa, Calistoga. And she said, "Well, don't come today because he's not feeling good." So problem we had was the only day we could come was Saturday, because we all had to leave early Sunday to catch flights to get back. So the next morning, we stayed in a small town not far from where he lived, and I called her. She said, "Get over here as soon as you can. He's feeling pretty good, and he wants to see you guys. And whatever you do, just be sure and tell him that his coffee tastes good, no matter how bad it tastes." So that was it. That was the qualification. We got there, and we spent 6, 7 hours of glorious time with him, and he was okay to talk with, and we could see there was some trouble brewing there, but we spent this time we had this beautiful home talking and reminiscing about stuff that for all of us, our lives changed that October day when we won the World Series, October 16th. I'm still in New York, between New York and Florida, and doing personal appearances because of it. How one day changes your life, and we were so happy to do it. But it was a sad moment because when we left, uh, I said to him, we'll see you soon," and we didn't make any plans for that night, and he understood that. And I got back to the hotel. We were leaving the next morning, and there was a message from him. "Hey, what time are we going out to dinner?" I thought we were going out to dinner. So you knew that he was not really all there. And then, 5, 6 months later, he was gone. So it was a sad moment for all of us because you could feel that that this could be the last time all of us were together. And subsequently, Buddy has since passed away. Tom has passed away. Thankfully, Kuzman, who's been ill, is still around, and Svoboda's going strong. He's down in New Orleans. So it was a wonderful time, and the book was very successful. It would turn out to be a New York Times bestseller, but it was a sentimental journey and a little bit of a tearjerker because we reminisced about the friendships that you develop, especially on a team like we were, because we were a bad team. The Mets were always bad up to that point, finishing last place, and we won the World Series, and all of a sudden our lives changed, and so we all became stronger because of that. It's one thing to have a good team and then win it all the next year, but when you're a bad team finishing ninth, a half a game out of last place, I think would beat Houston. Houston was in the last place. To win it all was very, very special, and with the ties we had together were very, very important to me, and that's why we made the trip out there.
Well, Shamsky, I'm going to go back a little bit now, and I'm going to mention a couple of people. Who I was very close to when I was in high school? I was very close to your cousin Nancy Yaffe,
Yeah,
and she was a great gal. And then she married a guy who was probably one of the best running backs that U City ever had, Jack Holzberg. And I went to visit Jack some years ago. He was okay. He was kind of struggling, and Jack passed away not too long ago. So, we're losing friends, Shamps. But you know what? We're still here, and we're still bullshitting
well,
people
what
and
we have
having
is
a good
E-Man is
time.
memory. We have memories.
Oh,
Nancy was a sweetheart, and her dad, my Uncle Max, really
oh,
was a guy.
and
Was
Millie.
really a wonderful guy. He would soft toss with me, and we would play catch, and um, he loved the horses too. He was a horse guy, and I introduced him to Pete Rose. I think him and Pete hit it off pretty good. He might have been the person that took
God.
Pete out to Cahokia Downs or wherever they were racing horses. So who knows? But yeah, he was a wonderful guy, and Jack Holzberg was a terrific athlete, great football player, like you said. And you know, um, you're right. We keep losing friends. We cherish these moments. Like I cherish this time we can talk and reminisce and bring back these wonderful memories because we have memories. That's what keep us going, and we laugh about some of the things and some of the friends we grew up with. And I think it's great you're doing this program, and I follow you and I listen to some of the things you're doing a great job. And to me, being able to share these moments with you is very, very special.
Well, I remember. I do have a good memory. From years ago. I might have forgotten what I was supposed to do yesterday at home, but I remember your mom and dad, Bill and Sadie. Am I right? Did I hit it? Bill and Sadie
Yeah.
Shamsky, and then Art's sister. For everybody who's listening, what a great gal she was. I mean, Dee, at not at the old age, but certainly not at a young age, became an attorney and did very well. Right? Wasn't she some
Yeah,
and
she was a public defender. She would defend anybody's right for a trial, even if they're standing there with a gun smoking in their hand. She was terrific. I miss her. I look forward to seeing her and coming back and hooking up with you and seeing some friends. And she's gone now, but I've got great memories. My dad was he was good. He got me started with as soon as I could walk with a ball, a bat, and a glove in my hand. But he would get to that ballpark at 4:30 when the gates open, and
I
there's a
remember.
funny story. I'm going to tell you a really quick funny story.
Go ahead.
He was one of these guys that didn't say much when the game was going on, and after the game he'd say, "Oh, you got a couple hits, that's great," or "You got an important hit, that's great." But what did you do those other two times when you made outs? What happened those two times? So I had to defend those outs. But what really was really funny one day. I was I was with the Reds and we were in Crosley Field and no, I was with the Mets. I'm sorry. We were in New York and we were up in New York and Tommy Helms, who was with the second baseman with the Reds, had just come from St. Louis. And you'll get a kick out of this story. And back in those days, it was fraternizing rules, so we could kind of yell at each other from a little bit of distance. And Tommy said, "Hey, I talked to your dad the other night in St. Louis." I said, "Oh my God, what did he do? Call you for tickets? To see you play the Cardinals?" He said, "No, no. He called and wanted to know why you went 0 for 4 the other night against somebody." and Tommy wasn't even there. I don't know. My dad was thinking maybe Tommy knew I went 0 for 4 in a game. So, I mean, that's what, you just laugh at some of those things
Well,
that
hey,
happen.
I got a memory, Shams, and I don't know if you remember this, but I was teaching in a small town in Illinois, and a buddy of mine, we decided we were going to come up to Chicago because the Cubs were playing Cincinnati. And we figured Holtzman and Shamsky. I kept telling my buddy there, and we lied at school and told them we were sick. We got in trouble. But anyway, we were teaching school. So I remember after the game, did you have a pitcher by the name of Ellis?
Wait, say it again.
The pitcher, Ellis, Ellis. He was one of your pitchers on Cincinnati.
Sammy Ellis.
Sammy Ellis. Okay, he had a
Yeah.
bad day, Shamsk. Okay, listen.
Okay.
And afterwards, we went to some, I don't know, there was a local bar or something. All you guys were in there, and I'm in there, and you and I. And this guy says to me, he says, "Hey, what do you think was wrong with me today?" Or something. I said, "Hey, man," I said, "I pitched at Washington. You're in a big league. What are you asking me? Are you kidding me?" But I remember,
Yeah.
and Kenny was there. Uh, with the Cubs, and I never really knew how good Kenny was. You know what I mean? And it was a end of the season, Art. It was in September, real cold, kind of a cold day in Chicago. And Kenny pitched that day, and I watched him warm up, and he warmed up on a right by the dugout in those days. Remember how they didn't have it in a bullpen?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I went down there to watch him warm up because there was maybe 5,000 people at Wrigley Field, and I saw him throwing, and I thought, uh-oh, once again, Ron, you don't get it. This guy can throw. He's pretty damn good,
Yeah.
wasn't he, Art?
He had a great career. I think he threw 2 no-hitters. Um, he won 5 world championships. A lot of people forget that. He won 3 with Oakland and 2 with the Yankees. So 5 world championships. I was sad when he passed away. He was a trip. We got to know each other really well. We both managed in Israel 2007, the Israel Baseball League, which was beginning of baseball in Israel. It was a great experience for us. And the other third big league player was Ron Bloomberg. We managed over there, and it wasn't really good baseball. It was really kind of a start of trying to get the game developed over there. The fields were not really good. The equipment was bad. The players were okay. But from that year, 2007, Israel decided to develop the game and be a factor in international baseball, and have gone on to play really well in the World Series, in the Olympics, and in the World Baseball Classic. And so Kenny and I became very good friends. I was saddened when he passed away. It's another too young when he passed away. But
Well, Shams, let me tell you, I was shocked. Bobby, his brother, Bobby Holtzman, he called me when Art passed away, and he asked me if I would do a eulogy for him at his funeral.
oh,
So,
okay,
and so I went there, and I did the best I could do, and I'll tell you who was there. Um, uh, Eddie Mickelson, him and Kenny were really close. Ed,
yeah, yeah,
one of the last living Brownies, and
yeah,
Ed was about 96 or 97 then. And I'll tell you a cute story, and then I'm going to have to get off here. We're getting late. Listen, so anyway, Mick and I are talking before the funeral. And we're standing around outside the gravesite and all this business, and Mick and I are talking. So Pomerantz shows up, see, and Mickelson, he still was sharp. So Pomerantz says, hi, Mr. Mickelson. So Mickelson looks at him. He says, I don't think I know you. So, so, so Sandy says, I'm Sandy Pomerantz. So Mick says, who? Sandy who? I'm sorry. And then of course Mick went on and said, "I know you, Sandy." He gave me a hug and shook his
oh,
hand.
okay.
But Mick was he was messing with him, and
Oh my gosh.
oh yeah, he was really messing with him. But Kenny's former wife was there. She was very gracious, and both his daughters were there, and
Yeah.
it was a nice affair. As nice as funerals can be, right, Shams?
Yeah, yeah. Kenny was a terrific pitcher, and had great years, and I got to know him really well, and he was a little behind me and you in University City, but I would have liked to play high school ball with him. But he was a really great major league pitcher.
He was. And listen, By the way, Art, well, you want to talk to the audience that's listening and viewing us today about how they can get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with Art Shamsky.
Yeah, thanks, Josie. I do a lot of personal appearance. I've written 3 books. I'm on the process of trying to develop another one. Time is the enemy, but I do a lot of personal appearances. I'm down in Florida now, but back in New York in the tri-state area and down in Florida, I talk to a lot of mostly the Met fans, believe it or not. But if somebody's interested in me speaking with them and talking to them, telling my stories, they can just go to artshamsky.com, www.artshamsky.com. They can email me and get in touch with me. That would be great. I appreciate you letting me make a plug for that. But I still enjoy meeting people and talking about it. I've very quickly I've run into probably over the years 100,000 people who told me they were at the last game when we won the World Series in 1969. And I say to myself, well, ballpark held 53,000, but 100,000 people have said they were there. So it doesn't make any difference. As long as they think they were there, that's fine with me. But that team lives on forever, particularly with Met fans. It's 57 years now, and the fact is, it's still one of the most talked about teams in the history of baseball. And I still enjoy talking to it. And when I talk to people who are usually in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they uh, they get their youth comes back for a short period of time. They remember when their parents took them, and then now they take their grandkids. So it makes me feel younger, and I really enjoy talking about it. But there's so many things that I'm so lucky, Ronnie, very quickly to have been part of that team because so many things in my life happened because I was part of it. They named a dog after me, and
Oh yeah,
everybody
talk
goes
about that real
Raymond.
quick about Raymond.
Yeah, they named it this ugly bulldog. I wish it was a beautiful lab, but it's an ugly bulldog. But I get people talking about it, and I watch that program all the time. And it took 7 of us to Vegas singing in the show after we won, and I was able to broadcast for so many years and do things, and it was only because I was part of that '69 Met team. So I'm very grateful. I've got no complaints. People always say, "Don't you wish you were there making the money that they're making now?" And my question is, "Oh, you're crazy, of course." But I wouldn't trade it for the players I played with. Very quickly, that era I played in '60s and '70s, Mays, Aaron, Clemente, Stargell, McCovey, Rose, Bench, all those great pitchers, Koufax, Drysdale in the National League. I mean, Gibson called. I mean, Seaver. I would never had a chance to play with them if I didn't come up in that era. And so for me to be able to do that was very special. And I owe it all to you and the friends we had growing up who kind of got me in this and in the sphere of things to be able to make it to the big leagues. So I thank you for that.
Well, Shams, let me tell you something. All those players that you just mentioned, and you were right with them, buddy. You were playing with them. You were competing against them. They can talk about the modern baseball players all they want, and I'll listen to them. But the guys you just mentioned, that era, and then even going back a little further with Stanley Musial and Ted Williams. Hey, you know what? I'll take those guys, and I'll take you. Okay. It's great talking to you, my friend, and I'll call
Thanks.
you in the next couple of days. We can talk about this. And this show will be Matt back here. He'll probably have this thing out in a couple of days, and it'll go to my grandson. He likes to edit it, but when it goes to my grandson, I'll send it to you also. And then
Okay,
next,
I'll try and post it. Try and post it on Facebook. If anybody wants to, they can contact me on Facebook too,
yeah, and then
or X. But I'll try and post it on Facebook.
when
That'd be
you yeah,
great.
when you get the first one, champs, you just look at it and see what you like, okay? And tell me. And
Okay.
then that Thursday, which will be next week from tomorrow, it'll be out for everybody, and you can post it and do whatever
Okay.
you want, buddy. Okay.
Sounds great, Z-Man.
Okay. How's your wife? Good.
Listen,
You're getting along good with her?
everything's good. All good. You keep doing what you're doing. You look great.
Oh, thanks.
You're
So do
a
you.
tribute to St. Louis sports, and I'm really happy that we go back so many years because we have cherished memories. That's for sure.
Well, we met in 1956, buddy. That's a long time. It's been a
Yeah.
great many. I don't know. I don't even want to do the math now, but all those years have been great years knowing you. And every time you came to St. Louis and we got together, it's great. And next time you get back here, we'll do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, when I try to, if I can't remember something, I'm going to call you because you got a great memory.
Thanks, Shams. You're a great man. Love you.
All
All right, buddy.
right.
Take
See you
care.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Well, it's been great having Art on the show today. It's great to be with a lifetime friend, a guy that I've been very, very good friends with since 1956, if you can believe that. So, all of you who are watching this, if you like it, hit a like. And then most of you, I think, do have friends. Then you can send it to a friend, and share it with a friend. And I will remind you of one thing that I remind you every week. And my grandson's sitting right next to me. This will go for him too. Today is the youngest you'll ever be. Have a great day and tune in. We're having fun with this.